Hi everyone, my name is Emma and my presentation is over mononucleosis. So mononucleosis is also known as monoglandular fever and a lot more commonly kissing disease because of the way that it's spread. It's an infectious disease caused by the Epstein-Barr virus. This virus is one of the most common viruses in the world. It's a lot more common in adults and teens, and it has the ability to cause diseases that aren't mononucleosis, which is pretty interesting. So this disease was first recognized in the 1880s under a different name, idiopathic adenitis. So that was later differentiated into mononucleosis after more was discovered about the Epstein-Barr virus as a whole. And the etiology was discovered in 1964. One of the most interesting parts of mononucleosis to me is the dormancy. So mononucleosis has the ability to remain in the body after the infection has passed. Once you're infected with EBV, it remains in your body for life, not necessarily as an infection, but it has the ability to cause recurring infections. So you can see on this chart the primary infection caused by the virus. The virus infiltrates the B cells and becomes latent, and reactivation causes the persistent infection. So reactivation can be caused by a lot of factors, some of the most common being stress, compromised immune system, which could be another pathogen, or taking immunosuppressants, and hormonal changes caused by menopause. So EBV can reactivate as asymptomatic, however it is still contagious when asymptomatic. Here's another chart very similar to the last one. It just shows the primary infection, the growth of EBV in the B cells, and then reactivation caused by one of these factors. So the history of mononucleosis, it was named after monocytes. So these two photos are a monocyte right next to infectious mononucleosis. So on less advanced microscopes, they were often confused and they couldn't tell the difference between them. So when it was first discovered, like I said earlier, it was named idiopathic adenitis, which directly translates to unknown origin, but inflammation of the glands. So not a lot was known about this virus when it was first discovered. It was just known to cause inflammation of the glands, specifically in like lymph nodes, tonsils, those types of glands. Mononucleosis was first discovered and named in 1920 by Thomas Brett and Frank Evans. They were able to differentiate between monocytes with new microscopes. A lab test was produced in 1931 called the Paul-Bunel test. However, this test was later replaced by the heterophile antibody test. So symptoms are what make mononucleosis so difficult to diagnose and treat. Common symptoms include the sore throat, fever, cough, swollen lymph nodes, fatigue, maculopapular rash, which includes a rash that is both just flat and red, but also has those bumps, and petechia, which is a rash that caused by bleeding under the skin. So all of these symptoms, for the most part, can be symptoms of other diseases, other illnesses, which is what makes it so difficult to diagnose someone with infectious mononucleosis. Some less common symptoms would be the swollen spleen. That's more of a hallmark of the disease. However, it's not actually present in most of mononucleosis cases. The swollen liver and abdominal pain go hand in hand. All of these things trademarks of the disease, but really less common symptoms. On the next few slides, I have a few images. It's just a warning that they are a little graphic. So here's that maculopapular rash. It's widespread. It's got the flat red, but also a few bumps on it. The petechia, really interesting with mono, you can get petechia in your mouth because of the inflammation of those lymph nodes and tonsils. However, it can be on the skin. With the lymph nodes and spleens, one of the big dangers of mononucleosis is getting the enlargement of your spleen. Anyone playing sports runs the risk of rupturing their spleen. That's why when infected with mononucleosis, you have to be very careful and rest. In rare cases, the spleen can rupture on its own, but regardless, any rupturing of the spleen is a life-threatening injury. For the swelling of the lymph nodes, that's a hallmark of a lot of diseases. That's what makes it really difficult to diagnose, because this is one of the most common symptoms for mono, but also a lot of other just head colds. So you can see here the swollen lymph nodes compared to the normal lymph nodes. That can cause a lot of pain in the throat. And the tonsils, you see, they get the yellow layer, the white layer. That's also used when diagnosing mono. So more about the Epstein-Barr virus. The taxonomic name is actually human herpesvirus 4. It's primarily spread through body fluids such as saliva. In rare cases, it can be spread by tears, but usually this is saliva, and this is why it's called the kissing disease. It can also be spread by young children drooling on toys. That's an easy way for it to spread, but usually just saliva, such as sharing cups, sharing silverware, sharing food even, that can all be modes of transmission for the Epstein-Barr virus. The Epstein-Barr virus is also the cause of many different illnesses. You can see here on the photo that it can cause Hodgkin's lymphoma, hepatitis, several types of cancer, multiple sclerosis, herpes, and inflammatory bowel disease. I think it's very interesting that one virus can cause so many different diseases and cancers. And then, like I already talked about, after an EBV infection, the virus remains dormant in the body, hiding in the B cells, and that can become a recurring infection. So the phases of infection, it's not typically noticeable until stage 2. You can see on the chart, stage 1 is just the virus replicating itself in the body. Stage 2 is when you start to get those symptoms. EBV has gone into the organs. It's showing up as mononucleosis, but still may not be diagnosed due to the difficulty of diagnosing mononucleosis. Stage 3, you have bigger problems. It says lupus, thyroid problems. Those can be chronic and cause problems later. You have stage 4 when it's inflamed the central nervous system. This is when your mystery illnesses develop. This just includes symptoms that are outside of typical EBV infections. These mystery illnesses just make it more difficult to diagnose an EBV infection than it already was. So some cases remain asymptomatic for the entire infection. Someone can have mononucleosis without actually presenting any symptoms at all, but still being contagious. It's misdiagnosed frequently. That's again because the symptoms they align with most other common colds, the flu. A lot of people don't get tested for mono because it seems unlikely that they might have it. So again, other diseases caused by EBV, you've got Hodgkin's disease, multiple sclerosis, fatigue syndrome, and tumors. These are all diseases that could just be caused by the same virus. Now, mononucleosis is often caused by EBV, but there is a list of other causative agents that could cause mononucleosis, that being cytomegalovirus, toxoplasmosis, HIV, rubella, hepatitis, and adenovirus. These are all causative agents, just like EBV, that could cause mononucleosis in the body. So transmission, it's obviously spread between contact with bodily fluids, like we talked about saliva. Tears, in very rare circumstances, can also carry the EBV virus to spread mononucleosis. But it's going to be most common spit, saliva, and that can be spread between direct contact, like kissing, it's the kissing disease, and through indirect contact, like sharing silverware, sharing a cup, sharing food, all of those things where you're getting direct or indirect contact with someone's saliva. To diagnose, it's very difficult to diagnose, mainly because people won't run tests, because they're assuming it's just some other cold, like the flu. So physical tests they might run could be checking your lymph nodes. Swollen lymph nodes are definitely a sign of mononucleosis. Swollen tonsils, abdominal pain and swelling, that's a big one with the spleen. As the main concern for mono, you want to check the spleen immediately. And you've got that rash, the maculopapular rash and the petechia are all big signs of mono. So those are all physical testing that you might have done to check for mono. As far as lab tests, you can have a white blood cell count run. Elevated levels of white blood cells would indicate a mono infection. A monospot test is that typical test you get with a finger prick. That'll tell you if you're positive for mononucleosis. However, it might come up positive for past infections too. That's where the antibody titer test comes into play. The antibody titer will determine between past and current infections. That will be able to see whether you actually have an active mono infection or if that mono is just laying dormant in your body. There's my works cited page. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of my presentation.